The book is closed on the 2025 NFL Draft, and we're here to break everything down, including some of the undrafted free agents that have signed with the Kansas City Chiefs since we last spoke. What's up, everybody? Ken Swanson here with my friend Maddie Lane. Maddie, how we doing?
Listen, we're feeling pretty good. We're doing good right now. The draft is over. It's a year's worth of work. I think we are, oh man, what do I say, Ken? About 10 hours away from me forgetting that all these players exist and focusing on next year's draft.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You're gonna the page turns quickly for Maddie Lane. So we'll be starting that pretty quick here. But yeah, man, there's so much to talk about here. We're so I think having a chance to take a breath, relax a little bit, but also get right back into the tape last night with some of the new additions for the Kansas City Chiefs, doing some refreshes and all that kind of stuff there. Getting a chance to take a breath and get a perspective and get a higher level view of this class. Off the top, how you feeling?
I'm pretty good, right? I think we kind of said it as we were going through all the picks. The Chiefs were finding good values all the way throughout this draft. They were constantly kind of like shooting above what you would traditionally expect. So they were finding surplus value. I think if you go back and look at, like, people like to do these graphs that showcase the value that they got per the pick via the consensus board or where people have guys ranked, and the Chiefs are typically this year coming out in the top 5 to top 10 of that. So they got good values across the board. They attacked all the positions that I think we anticipated them doing throughout the entire draft process. They get the tackle, defensive line, some offensive weapons, a cornerback even slips in there. So I think they just kind of checked all the boxes, right? They checked all the boxes that everybody thought going into it. And there really can't be anybody that comes out of this upset saying they left anything on the board, right? The only position they maybe didn't get to is a nose tackle. And we can talk about that later, but it just might not have been that important to them looking back at how they've reacted or like acted over the past, 6-7 seasons.
I think there's a couple positions that they are approaching with that philosophy on similar to what they did with nose tackle. And yeah, we'll talk about that, I think, as we get to the day 3 conversation. But we're going to go pick by pick. We're going to talk through these guys a little bit, and we'll start with the belle of the ball, the left tackle that the Chiefs so desperately need, Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. And it feels like forever since they made that move. And we really didn't spend any much time at all talking on Friday and Saturday about Josh Simmons and our excitement for him. But, I think if you were watching the live stream, how thrilled we were to see the Chiefs grab an ideal selection for them at the end of the first round.
Well, I mean, listen, just personally for us here, and I think people probably could pick it up through the live stream, but everyone around, starting off a draft with Josh Simmons, a player that I think most everybody was very happy with, and that people generally like, that they expected, it sets the tone for the rest of the draft, right? So you come in on Friday, and it doesn't matter if there's things that are happening that you don't love or that you do love, you still have this good feeling about the draft. You're in good spirits, and I do think starting off the draft with Josh Simmons kept everything like that going through the draft all the way until, round 7, but dialing it back to the player, we did it. We had to kind of move on pretty quick and start talking about the next stuff. So, hey, here it is. Here's an offensive tackle that if you listen to Brett Veach or Andy Reid talk about him, or you listen to anybody else that's kind of covering the draft, he was on his way to being the number 1 or number 2 offensive tackle in this draft class before the injury. He was on his way to be a top 10 pick in this draft class before the injury happened. And if you're the Chiefs and you do all your checkups on it, you look into the knee, you check it out and see what happens, and you come away and Rick Burkhalter is saying, hey, I think we're good with that. We feel comfortable with where he's at. We like what we're seeing. You have to be excited about this pick to find this type of player all the way back at pick 32.
Yeah, like it's the right swing at the right time for the Kansas City Chiefs when you're looking at what they've been through the last few years trying to solve the tackle position. And it's been a revolving door, and they've made decisions to, try to navigate, not having a reliable tackle that, can be year in, year out, the guy that they need. And it's not a knock on some of the players that have tried to replace, that they've tried to replace Eric Fisher with. I mean, they got Orlando Brown for a couple years, and that's been the most consistent player for them over the last, since Eric Fisher's injury. And it's been a revolving door. And instead of continually having struggles over there on the left side, instead of, having to go through the process every single year of finding someone at least capable of playing left tackle, they just said, you know what, let's go out and just try to address it aggressively. The aggressive correction was purely at left tackle, essentially, right? So they grab Jaylen Moore, they give themselves a floor, and then they go get a guy that there's a chance is the last left tackle of Patrick Mahomes' career. He has 10-year starter 12-year starter type ability. And so however long Patrick Mahomes plays, there's a chance that Josh Simmons is the left tackle for the Chiefs for the rest of that time.
So, I mean, we're watching the highlights now. If you guys are sitting here watching this live while we're going through it, you see the highlights up here on the screen showing 71 for Ohio State, Josh Simmons, and we can see everything he does well. But let's talk about like the player on the field a little bit here, right? When I think we compare him, not even to specific other players, but when you're watching him, it's the fluidity of his movement. It's how natural everything is. And that's what I keep coming back to is when you think, what does an offensive tackle look like? I really think that Josh Simmons, of anybody in this draft class and even a lot of draft classes, he's the guy you put on. You're not searching for, oh, he does this thing a little differently, but it'll be okay. Or here's where this shortcoming is, and this is how he makes up for it. Everything looks almost exactly how you want it to look for a left tackle in the NFL. And it's so easy. It's so fluid. He is arguably like the quickest, just the way his feet work and how athletic he is and how he works through space. But what I notice here is his hands. He uses his inside and outside hand independently. He uses them well together. He gets one hand high, he gets one hand low, so he gets full control. But if he needs to, he will only engage with one hand. He doesn't allow his frame to get off balance. And this is something we have seen Wanya Morris or a Kingsley Suamatea struggle with as we go through and I kind of watch them play, as they get a little off balance trying to land both hands at the same time or use the same technique. So I just think the play that you see from him, technically speaking, is phenomenal. And obviously the athlete's right there to follow suit.
Yeah. And, the swings that the Chiefs have taken at tackle are not, like you said, like they're not as refined as what Joshua Simmons. Joshua Simmons has day one starter ability. The only thing keeping him is his rehab. People talk about, and I did want to add one comment. People have talked a lot about the rehab process for him, right? And like there's the 55% chance that he comes back to normal. The
54% according to Tucker.
54.
He just wants to make sure that's known.
Okay. Well, if you think about it, like the Chiefs are not having to make a decision, or the Chiefs are making a decision in the middle of that process when they can determine whether or not he is on the right side of that process. Yep. And I think that's important acknowledging is, in some situations, maybe it's a guy that's been signed into a deal to a 4-year deal, has the injury, and now you're, potentially stuck with that contract for the next few years because you don't know if he's going to make it out of the other side. And in this situation, the Chiefs do all this medical legwork. They have the luxury of getting to decide whether or not they think that injury is going to be one of those that recovers before they make the selection. So I would anticipate the odds are higher that Josh Simmons makes it as is able to come back as a left tackle and play at a capable level. And I think the Chiefs have expectations that is the case.
Well, I wanted to talk about the knee injury just real quick, because this is where I think all the talk about him is going to center. So that's why I wanted to start with the play. And now we want to go back to I want to do the injury, because I was listening to Andy Reid's press conference. I was late to this, I know. I was listening to the Andy Reid press conference. I found it interesting that him and Rhett Veach talked about how Rick Burkhalter saw him at the combine, saw what it looked like. Then they brought him in on that 30 visit and saw what he could move, the stretching he could do. And they were saying consistently that he is above the pace or ahead of the pace typically that they see in this injury. Mm-hmm. That's good news. Obviously, we don't know they're not saying he's going out there and working out. He's just kind of stretching, doing some other stuff. So we don't know where exactly he's at right now. But two things that Andy said that really intrigued me. He said that this particular injury, the patellar injury, is more of like a 6-month recovery time compared to an ACL that he put at 9 months. So this is something that typically he thinks, or what he sees, guys can come back a little bit faster and start getting practice in. And that bodes well for getting back into training camp or to getting with the team, the new team that just drafted him. And then the next thing, he specifically mentioned Brandon Graham and Coral Buckhalter having patellar tendon injuries while when his time was with the Eagles, and how both of them were able to come back and play. And I don't know the exact dates of those injuries because I don't think they were reported that way, right? And maybe that goes into some of this study when we're talking about NFL players or trying to find where guys return to that. Maybe not everything is reported to completely common knowledge of who has this injury, who doesn't, who just has a knee injury. Because I don't remember this being a conversation for Brandon Graham, who clearly had a very long NFL career. Mm-hmm. And if he had this injury while Andy Reid was there, according to Andy, like it sounds like, he came back and played really well after. So like that's another good thing. Same thing with Buckhalter. So I just found those two things interesting from his press conference.
That is very interesting. So, I think the Chiefs feel pretty confident in their ability to get Josh Simmons back, and they show that with the first-round pick. And they traded back a little bit in doing so to get an extra asset. Yeah. And boy, howdy, I'm excited about the pick that they got because of that. But that was a day 3 move. The day 2 moves, Omar Norman-Lott, the defensive tackle out of Tennessee. And I think there's been a lot of mixed reviews for fans throughout this. And, I think there's even been mixed reviews as far as, his perception in the draft space. He's a very polarizing player, but we've definitely had a chance to get into the tape a lot more since then, and since the draft pick. And I know, you and me have both been back to the tape a lot with Omar Norman-Lott.
Yeah, he is a guy that I think is going to send me back. I'm going to spend the most time with his film of all these draft picks, just trying to figure out exactly where I land on it, because he is not a guy that I was as high on as it sounds like the Chiefs were, and maybe the rest of the NFL based on this selection. And for a while, I was kind of in a camp of like, I know why people like him, but I don't know if I see it. I don't know if I see the vision even. And I will say now, I've gone back for both nights now after day 2 and day 3 and watched more, and I can at least I start to understand it a little bit more. And if you go in and watch the Senior Bowl reps, that's where a lot of it is. You got to go back and find very seldom plays, but the plays that are coming throughout a lot of the other games, that's not just cut-ups of him. You have to watch the whole thing. There is a constant just level of energy, explosion, and some power that he does have that really stands out. And so I think under the idea of, if we can get this guy, and maybe we can increase his snap count a little bit, but we get this kind of energy, he does become a high-end rotational defensive lineman for them that can come there, just cause chaos. He plays with so much energy. It is just, and it is a complete, everybody's saying It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the wild card episode, he is Charlie in that episode. There is just pure chaos every time he's on the field. And I honestly wonder if the Senior Bowl coaches asked him not to practice in team periods after the first day, because there was about 4 plays on the first day of practice where he was pushing his guy back into a puller, and it just means the play has to stop because you can't go hit a quarterback, or they don't want you tackling running back. So he can be very disruptive. There is a pathway to it that is becoming a little bit more apparent. So I do get the upside. It takes a little while to find it, and I don't know if that's what I love about pick 62, is having to work so hard to find that path.
Yeah, and I went back to the Senior Bowl tape as well, and that definitely did help me see the vision a little bit more as well. I think you talked about, hey, let's get a guy with energy, let's get a guy with that kind of motor and some traits that work, right? He's got desirable length, he's got really long arms, and I think he uses his length well. I think he's got really good hand technique, and you see him being able to win with hands at times. So you pair all that stuff up together, and I think we said it on the broadcast, this is a guy that played more in a sub-rush role at Tennessee. He was not a full-time player for Tennessee. And to be fair, Tennessee does some weird stuff with their defensive line rotations as it is. They kind of, they go in mass. They're trying to keep bodies fresh as much as they possibly can. It's getting some of the things that you lost with Turk Wharton. You're talking about a high motor player, and I know they're not the same. Turk's a little bit twitchier, and Turk's a little bit smaller. But you're getting a guy that provides energy, provides some motor there, and provides some value from a sub rush perspective. Those are some of the traits that they maybe didn't feel like they had since they lost Turk and wanted back. And it's in a mold, it's in a body, it's in a frame that fits what Steve Spagnuolo typically prefers a little bit more than what they got out of Turk.
Yeah, he's a little bit closer to it. I actually wonder if Turk, once he left the Chiefs, because I do think he put on a lot of weight since he got into the NFL. So I actually wonder if their body types aren't very similar come to this point in time. And they're even built the same. They're actually both a little bit lower to the ground. Turk, all of his mass was in his lower half, and that's what I see with kind of Omar Norman-Lott. He's for a 290-pound guy, it looks like a lot of his mass comes into his lower body. So I can see that connection. And he obviously, as a prospect, has more talent than Wharton did, and that's why we are looking at him as a top 75 selection rather than somebody that you're finding, in the undrafted free agency department or anything like that. So I get it. I see where the upside absolutely is coming from it. I would love to see a guy get a little bit more run as a run defender, where he's not just shooting gaps, where he's not just slanting from the backside, because Tershawn Wharton became, I don't want to say a great run defender, but he became a very capable one over his time with the Chiefs. You could put him out there in place of Chris Jones as a 3-tech, and it didn't seem like there was a significant step back in his run D. This is 2 schools now that haven't really loved Omar Norman-Lott as a run defender. He hasn't been on the field a ton as a run defender despite some flashes. So those are just some things that, there's some things that still cause me some, I don't want to say concern, but I need to see it. I need to see where this goes. But I do think that the path to the projection of him becoming at least an impactful sub-package rusher is there. I did want to ask you another question too, because there's more people that, or not more, but some people that also think that the Chiefs might have been a little on the earlier side of drafting him, and because his range is everywhere. Do you think that this run on defensive tackles kind of in round 2 maybe impacted their decision to jump on him where they did? Because you saw TJ Sanders, Alfred Collins, and then Shamar Turner actually went one pick ahead of where the Chiefs picked, and that's a guy that we know Joe Cullen went down to that Texas A&M pro day, and he was one of the guys that he would have seen down there. We had even positioned it as, hey, maybe Shamar Turner is a guy they like because there is that athletic upside similar to Omar Norman-Lott and a body type they typically like. So do you think that run on defensive tackles maybe impacted that kind of like choice or decision there?
100%. I really do. And I think if you look at just from an approach perspective, I think the Chiefs played the board pretty well. I think they navigated the board very well. And I do think that they were just trying to make sure that they were securing a guy because they weren't overly confident they were going to get somebody they liked on the defensive line at pick 95. And maybe he wasn't, I don't know if he was the last guy in a tier for them. There's probably a couple defensive tackles that went after, but I don't know how confident they were that they were going to be able to get one of those defensive tackles that they preferred if they waited any longer than they did. So I do think that's just navigating the board and saying, going trenches early, like trenches just in general, I think went pretty early throughout the draft. Your first 2 selections there are D tackle. So, or D tackle and O tackle. So, no, I think that absolutely played a factor in why they went the route they did. So do you feel better about Omar Norman-Lott today than you did on Friday?
Yeah, no, I feel a little bit better about it now. I've seen enough of the highs. I've seen enough of the upside to say, hey, I understand the pathway and how we're getting there. Would he have been my favorite choice in the moment? Still, no. And I don't think that anything that's happened should be, there should be no amount of peer pressure from the stats or anything that's to change that. But I can see the pathway and how where we're going. I can see where the impact is the upside, and I can see how introducing his brand of chaos, energy, power, and all that into this team and putting that next to a George Karlaftis, next to the next player we might talk about here in a little bit, I can understand how that all kind of comes together. And it's something that Chiefs would be going for and looking at. And then once I really looked at the rest of the defensive tackles that went shortly after this, there might have been a pretty big fall off. We all loved CJ West, who went later in the draft, but if you remove him from the equation, there wasn't a lot of defensive tackles that were going to bring this kind of pass rush juice, even as their highest of high upsides.
Absolutely. And so I think that was part of the strategy. And if you look at how they approached it and not having to address defensive tackle later and being able to address some of these other picks later in the draft, makes some sense to me. Ashton Gelotte is the 66th pick in the 2025 NFL draft. He's a guy that the Chiefs were able to acquire because they moved on from L'Jarius Sneed last year. You just brought up George Karlaftis. This is a guy that has a relationship and has been working with George Karlaftis this year. An interesting prospect out of Louisville and a guy that he looks like a Steve Spagnuolo defensive end. The play style does, even though the measurables maybe aren't exactly what they've typically preferred at that position.
I think he was called 2 peas in a pod with George Karlaftis. So again, things I didn't know until I went and listened late to the pressers. George Karlaftis' defensive line coach at Purdue, it would make sense, went to Louisville when the coaching staff there went to Louisville. So he became Ashton Gelotte's defensive line coach. So not only did they have the same defensive line coach that put him in touch with each other, George would come down there and work out every now and then, just having the access and the relationships there. So they became workout partners. He said him and George did film study about his own tape and stuff like that. George was helping him out and kind of being somewhat of a mentor, it sounds like. So here's a guy that has this familiarity with George Karlaftis, which kind of means you probably have a familiarity with at least how the Chiefs do things at the NFL level. The Chiefs like the character. And then when you watch them, I'm not trying to draw a comparison to George Karlaftis because I don't know if that's exactly the route I want to go. I think he kind of moves and plays a little differently. But when we're talking about the effort, the energy, and just kind of the overall profile of being compact, powerful, and just going 110 miles an hour all the time, yeah, I think it's pretty easy to see how if you like George Karlaftis as a team, you could like him as well.
I think, it feels like the Chiefs have dabbled a little bit in speed rushers, right? And they've tried to see if they can find a guy that can give you a little bit of juice up the arc, a little bit of flex, a little bit of ability to turn a corner. And they just haven't been able to find someone that can really consistently do that. I'm wondering, for all the things you just said, you're absolutely right. This could be a small foray into a Steve Spagnuolo version of a guy that can rush a little bit up the arc, just because I think there's a little bit more up the arc than I anticipated. I still think he's a power player. I still think he wants to play through a tackle, but I actually think he shows some flexibility in the lower half to be able to, to run the arc a little bit, to turn a corner a little bit more than they have in this room. And so it's almost like a Spagsy version of a guy that can get up the arc a little bit more than some of these other guys. And you look at the explosive measurements for him. This is an exceptional athletic tester.
Yeah.
A guy that showed great explosive numbers. And having a little bit more hip mobility than some of the edge rushers that this team prefers. You're sacrificing a little bit of length. You're getting a guy that still plays in the mold of what Steve Spagnuolo wants, but also maybe getting a little bit more ability up the arc that fits the archetype type of a Steve Spagnuolo defensive end.
Yeah, and you're not going to confuse him, I don't think, for like a bendy speed rusher. No. And I'm not saying you're trying to say, but he does have this ability to put his outside foot in the ground and change his pad level. He can drop his hips. So I would say he can kind of bend from the waist and still keep moving forward and get underneath. And this helps being a little bit shorter. He can play with that leverage, but get underneath offensive tackles. So he does still need to soften the corner on the outside to make it, but he can still bend the corner. He doesn't have to completely come to a stop and pivot around there. Then I'm just kind of looking through the KCSN draft guide and what we were going through with a lot of this, it's just so much violence in his game. The hands, whether it's coming in with chops or clubs, or when he decides to put his foot in the ground and run through your chest, and you can go back and watch him do it, to Joe Alt, good football player, Blake Fisher, good football player against Notre Dame last year in 2023. You go watch him against those guys, and he's putting them through the paces, and those guys are already in the NFL playing. So I really like what he brings just kind of in that regard, and he is decent in space. He has a good feel for playing out in space. So if you want to leave him unblocked off the edge on some option stuff or things like that, his lateral agility is good. His eye discipline is good. So yeah, I really like the player. He checks a lot of the boxes the Chiefs like, and I understand some fans say, we want a pure speed rusher up the arc, but do the Chiefs want that? Do the Chiefs see a need for that? I don't know if we're getting there to that point in time. So yeah,
I think this might be the closest you get, and that's okay, because this is a really fun football player, a really good football player, and a little bit of a skill set that they don't entirely have in this room right now. So Ashton Gelotte, he goes by Lato.
Yes.
Lato Gelotte.
It seems like he is okay with being, or okay, he likes to be called that, judging by his Instagram page. So that's a bonus.
Lato or Lotto?
See, that's a great question. He went with Lato just out of nowhere. That was a Kent maneuver to go Lato.
Yeah, I was under the impression it was Lotto.
I was 100% under impression it was Lato, but
well,
that's all right.
I'm not
Can't
hip.
win them all.
I'm not hip. I'm just, that's just not my thing.
You're not young.
I'm going to recover here and take a break, and we'll be back right after this.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Are you ready to win some real cash during the basketball playoffs? Well, check out Pick 6 from DraftKings. When it comes to basketball payouts, DraftKings Pick 6 posterizes the competition, and yeah, that includes Prize Picks. Hit all of your picks and score higher minimum payouts on Pick 6, plus even more cash if you outscore the competition. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. New players get 50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Here's what you got to do. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offers. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Talking like strategically about how the Chiefs approached this draft, right? We think they got ahead of a D tackle, or tried to make sure they secured a D tackle early because they saw the run coming. They then take Ashton Gelotte, the edge rusher out of Louisville. So you're investing in the trenches early. They go with another premium position in the top 100, and they surrender the Joe Tooney 4th round selection that they received this year, or this offseason in the trade, to move up for Null Williams, a cornerback out of California, a player that fits a Steve Spagnuolo cornerback to a T.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's kind of said it that's watched him play, both that are Chiefs fans or not. He is a guy that fits exactly what Steve Spagnuolo kind of likes across the board. Big, physical guy, has great ball skills on the back end. I believe he led all of FBS last year in interceptions, so that's huge for him. And yeah, the biggest downside, I guess, is he's not the fastest guy, and that is something the Chiefs and Steve Spagnuolo are very used to dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
They have no qualms with that. So his zone coverage ability is off the charts. And I mean, I guess the biggest question that I have with him coming to the Chiefs, because it's not tackling, it's not the ball skills, it's not his instincts. It's when he's asked to play in man coverage a little bit, or like their zone match stuff, where he's going to be essentially asked to play man as a press corner. Do you feel comfortable with him in that regard? Because that seems to be where some people have the most questions for him.
Yeah, and understandably, and then that you point to the athletic profile when you're taking that into consideration too. Is he a guy that's going to be able to have the long speed to try to cut the field when he's handling a crosser? How is he going to be able to handle some of that stuff? But I think you take some of the good with the bad here, right? And
Sure.
And I think what he brings to the table offsets a little bit of that. That's definitely one of the big concerns. And like, he's never going to be faster than he is at this point. So what he is what he is when it comes to the athletic profile. But man, those instincts, he's got just tremendous instincts, and those make up, I think, and that can make up for the athletic testing. Admittedly, more so from a zone perspective. But I mean, there's too many traits in this kid to not like and not want to get in this roster, despite some concerns with man coverage.
And if you look at the Chiefs, like, right, we're talking Jaylen Watson, Joshua Williams, guys over time that they have got in the same position that you would say have the same general questions, have been able to work out. I understand there's different talent level there between those guys and mixed results, but they've been able to figure it out. And the reason I would have hope for Null Williams in those spots is he is big and physical. And like, that is the Chiefs are going to say, we're not going to say play off man where you have to just rely on your change of direction, your speed, go beat a guy up at the line of scrimmage so you can stay attached to them throughout the route. So I'm not too overly concerned by it, because I've seen enough from him to transition like some other guys have. And then on top of that, the zone stuff is just so phenomenal from him, and the ball skills plus the run defense and kick return ability. That's going to become a theme for the rest of the show right now.
It really is. And that would have been concluded. That did conclude the Chiefs drafts through the first 2 days, and talking after, the press conferences after, talking about how they really liked what was still available for them at the receiver spot and at the running back spot, which 2 positions that they got questions on, because like, they were prioritizing the defensive side of the ball and in the trenches, and hadn't really gotten any skill players yet. And the Chiefs did not make an aggressive move up in round 4. They sat at pick 133, and they were able to get a player that we had as a 2nd round grade in the KCSN draft guide, a player that we both put 3rd round grades on ourselves, wide receiver Jaylen Royals out of Utah State.
Yeah. Another exciting player, super explosive with the ball in his hands. And then you're going to see some highlights as we go through this year of him making some plays downfield. So you think there's definitely more that is going to be available for him as a vertical receiver. But I think early on in the NFL, like, short, intermediate guy that you want to get the ball in his hands, has some ability to operate outside or in the slot, and just kind of has like that powerful, squatty build that a lot of the other wide receivers, the Chiefs besides Xavier Worthy, have gone for recently, like a Rashard Rice. And yeah, I think the fit makes a lot of sense. Kind of like we talked about with Gelotte and George Karlaftis being similar styles of players as prospects. You can't look at Royals and then Rashard Rice and say there's not a little bit of overlap and just what they are as players. So the Chiefs types are very kind of shining throughout this entire draft.
They're identical frames, nearly identical frames, both 6 foot, 205 pound receivers. So they're both kind of fit in that mold. I think for I think for Royals, when you're comparing him to Rashee Rice, I think there's a little bit more. They're both great after the catch. I think Royals is a little bit more long speed. I think Royals is a little bit more make you miss than contact balance. Not that they both don't have those things, but if I was if I was looking at the traits and stacking, I think that's where Royals shines a little bit more. This was another player that, the Chiefs said to talk back or to look back at the Senior Bowl and see some of those reps. And Royals got to play against press man coverage as an outside receiver on the right side of the formation.
Yeah, something he did not do. That's important because those are things he didn't do a lot of at Utah State.
Right. So he was a one-sided formational player only on the left side. And, they play with some wide splits that, kind of, make it a little bit more tricky to evaluate because they're always running inside stems to try to shorten the throws for the quarterbacks. He lines up on the right side, goes up against press man as an X receiver, or aligning as an X receiver in some of these one-on-one drills. And, one-on-one drills can be a little bit of fool's gold at times when you're looking at something like what you see at the Senior Bowl. But these weren't. These were legitimate, like, hey, I'm getting off the line of scrimmage. I'm not dancing. I'm not running around and taking 16 seconds to get a release together. He was running legitimate releases and showed and performed admirably. There's a little bit of concern, I think, of strength, through the stem and not getting pushed out, too far.
But with the Senior Bowl, no, I'm glad that you've been there too, because the Senior Bowl, you watch those clips, it almost was like it was a point of his to say, I'm going to be physical at the route stems, because he was bullying guys at the route stems at the Senior Bowl, borderline offensive pass interference bullying them, right? So it's almost like he did take that criticism from his agent or from scouts he talked to and said, okay, well, I'm going to show you, one, that I can win on the right side of the formation, but two, that I can be physical through my route stem. So that was nice to see, and I think that gives you hope going forward. And I do think that'll be important, because here is the one of the more concerning things about Royals profile, right? His arm length is 9th percentile of wide receivers. It's barely over 30 inches. So for a guy that typically isn't creating a ton of separation, especially downfield, that's going to mean that the catch radius is going to be a little bit smaller. And he does have good hands, but I would say you don't see him making the most acrobatic catches well outside of his frame. And one of the smaller arm lengths, only the 20th percentile wingspan. He is a guy that the ball kind of has to be a little bit more in his frame. So being more physical at the route stem to create that space is going to be huge for him moving forward. So it was nice to see him flash that at the Senior Bowl. And that might have been something that kind of intrigued the Chief scouts and why they sent him back there. And, oh, hey, by the way, returnability.
Another guy with some returnability. The Chiefs were not going to pick in the 5th round until the Philadelphia Eagles flipped them a pick to make sure that they got Jihad Campbell in round 1 at pick 31. So the Chiefs pick 32 in the 1st round, get Josh Simmons, a guy that I think they were still targeting anyway. And they're able to position themselves after a small trade up to get Jeffrey Basa, the off-ball linebacker out of Oregon. And, this is a guy that gives them more juice in the second level of their defense than they have currently, a skill set they don't have currently with, the ability in the past, the instincts. Listening to the scouts after this talk about this kid and from the character perspective, from a football intelligence perspective, that ultimately football intelligence is the premium that Steve Spagnuolo places on that second level of that defense. So to get a guy with that kind of football intelligence, a player that they were very surprised was even there. Yeah, same as me. I was surprised he was available at that point. But getting a guy with that kind of football intelligence in the body that he has, with the athleticism, the great linear speed, and still being 232 pounds, which is good enough for Steve Spagnuolo. That's a big win for this team to be able to get that player.
Yeah, and same thing. I was a little, like I said, a little later on some of these pressers, but I was listening to them talk about Basa here, and the big thing to me was, you mentioned it, the intelligence, the team leadership ability, the fact that he was kind of the guy that was the engine of that defense. He was the guy that was not just getting guys organized and stuff like that, but the one providing the energy, keeping everything up. And I think that's important for the Chiefs. And then we talk about the fact, we mentioned it on the show yesterday, he got the green dot and is a guy that's a little bit later to converting to linebacker from safety. That's a big deal to just become the guy that's calling all the plays, especially in a Dan Lanning defense that is similar to what you see in a lot of the SEC. And everybody loves it when an SEC linebacker has the green dot and does all these calls. So I think it's just important to note that he was doing that at Oregon, despite being, I would say, a little bit more of a raw, a little bit more of an athletic project type of linebacker rather than a completely like finished, ready to go on day one. So the upside there to keep developing the mental side, but then let the physicality really shine is all there. And he's just such a perfect fit next to Nick Bolton and hopefully Leo Chenal moving forward, right? He rounds out that room to be a complete unit.
That could be a really fun, like if the Chiefs do extend Leo Chenal, that is a very fun dynamic group of linebackers that they now have. Throwing Basa into the mix as a guy that can play from that chase position as a will linebacker, a little bit more out in space than some of the other two. And I think probably perform better in that regard as well. So Jeffrey Basa, another fun addition and a pick that I don't think we were anticipating them getting because of, they didn't have a 5th round pick, and then they were able to get a player with plus value again.
I think going into this draft, I kind of like pigeonholed one position as a best player available slot for them, and like where they might be able to get it. And I thought they kind of used it on Null Williams, right? Like, and yes, picking nits here, we could say maybe they could have gone with another defensive tackle because I had maybe slotted in a nose tackle type there as well. But I think coming in with this caliber of player made a lot of sense. And I think that's where they got Jeffrey Basa. I don't think you're going to find a single nose tackle, quote unquote, or any defensive tackle there that's probably going to have a better impact on him than this team at bare minimum as a special teams player moving forward.
The Chiefs played the board extremely well, getting Jaylen Royals. They got tremendous value with Jeffrey Basa in the 5th round, a player that we had as the 5th highest linebacker in the KCSN draft guide. Dane Brugler had as the 4th best linebacker in the KCSN draft, or in the Beast, the athletic draft guide. Rashard Smith, they play the board well and still get a good running back in round 7 at pick 228, trading both of their picks, including Mr. Irrelevant, to go up and get out ahead again of a run on running backs that happened through round 7. After Damian Martinez goes off the board a couple picks later, they go and get Rashard Smith, a dynamic weapon out of the running back position out of SMU.
This is going to be the guy with the most fun highlights of any draft pick they make, right? It's there. It's the one way I can describe it in one word. It is just bouncy. That's all it is. It's across the board. That's how he runs. That's how he plays the ball in the air. It's where he's at in the open field. He has that thing that you watch the highlights. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, no, this guy's my favorite player, right? And we'll see how that translates because he's a wide receiver turned running back very recently. So he's still figuring out the running back instincts, running between the tackles. But I see what he really does have, because when we say wide receiver turned running back, I got to clarify, he was an offensive weapon. So he did run the ball in high school and at Miami a little bit. So it's not like he never had done it. So I feel like his second level and then his open field, like feel and vision for how to run is very good. It's just dealing with traffic at the line of scrimmage. You kind of see it. He's very quick to bounce stuff outside. He wants to step into the line of scrimmage and then bounce back outside, bounce out wide, which is fine for a guy that's a satellite back of his nature. So it's just, he knows where he wins and he can only get better from there. But when we're talking about finding a guy that has home run ability, that can catch passes on 3rd downs, and that you want to get out in space. He's a running back the Chiefs now have that actually you want out in space, and he is dangerous. He kind of checks all these boxes of what that running back room is missing. So they did. They played the board great, and they get a guy that arguably fits the running back room better than anybody we had asked for since essentially Travion Henderson came off the board early on day 2.
Yeah, giving him a dynamic passing ability potentially out of the backfield that they really haven't had. It's in the last few years, and this is just the nature of the running back room. And, I think they still found value, but, it doesn't seem like they've placed a premium on this position. So to get a guy that could still give you these kind of plays, these kind of, options, being able to run an option route, being able to run an angle route, a shoot route out of the backfield, and give them, an option here in the passing game out of the running back room, and let him develop running between the tackles, or maybe don't ask him to do it all that much. You maybe just have it has to be. You don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to. You just have to maybe show it from time to time, so you're not, tipping your hand too much. But this guy gives you a ton. I mean, you're watching run a hitch and go right there. How many running backs are you seeing doing that these days? So this is a fun pick in round 7. And yeah, they addressed the running back position in a very deep class. And because it was a deep class, they were able to get someone of this caliber that, I think gives them another dynamic weapon into the mix for Patrick Mahomes.
No, absolutely. And this is, I think everyone's going to draw like a connection here to maybe like Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming out because we talked about the pass game there, but this is still even different than that. Clyde was a good receiver at LSU, but it was shorter routes. It was option routes. It was Texas routes. And I kind of mentioned it before. I call those like intermediate level running back routes. They're good. They're better than your just like what anybody can do, but they're still relatively limited to certain areas and attacking mismatches. Rashard Smith is the mismatch. You put him in the slot, and if you want to match up a linebacker on him, he's going to outrun him. You want to put a bigger safety on him. Well, once we get the ball in his hands, are we sure they can tackle him? Because he's making guys misses. So like he is the kind of receiving threat that I do think actually changes the numbers. And that's why I compared him to Ty Johnson from the Buffalo Bills and the KCSN draft guide, because it's the same similar style of player as a receiver. So like I really like this move for the Chiefs and how they can probably find a way to use him pretty early on.
So that's your 2025 draft class.
It's a good class.
It's a good class. How do you feel like? I know grades are kind of stupid, but well, you're grade it.
Okay, yeah, maybe I have to caveat this every time because people yell at me. C is my average draft. I give a lot of draft C's when I grade drafts. Okay, so I give this B+. It's a good draft. That's a very good draft. And I don't want people to be mad and say, oh, I didn't like it because I gave it a B+. This isn't an ESPN Mel Kiper grade where he gives his least favorite drafts a B+. I like this draft a lot. It's a B+. Josh Simmons does a lot for me here. My only I'm changing that. A-. Now that I think about it, I wanted A- on there on this one. So give me an A- for this because I do like how everybody they drafted kind of fits. And there's only one real draft pick that I'm just like not disliking, just I'm not sure of on what the impact is early on.
It's an A- for me too.
Oh, nice.
I was gonna go A- too, and like that's borderline A for me too. If I'm being honest, like it's right there. I feel really good about this class. It's the Omar Norman-Lott pick that's like the one that's giving me the most pause, and outside of that, just tremendous value on day 3, giving themselves some really good options and some really good talent that could potentially fit into this to fit on this team. I think there's a chance, you want to get away with 3 starters in every draft. I think there's a chance that they have a quality group of contributors here that can be on this roster for the duration of their rookie contracts, which is a massive, massive win. Like I see a path for every single one of these picks to be on the 53-man roster for the duration of their contracts, and that's huge. Before we get out of here, just a couple.
This is the big money part around right here.
Just a couple quick hitters on the undrafted free agent classes that they've been able to put together so far. I know there's a few fun names in there that we've seen, so maybe just shout out a couple that you're excited about real quick before we get out of here.
Starting at the top, these are like some essentially some like borderline my guys.
And I'll just tell you, I'm not even going to say anything. I'll let you go. You go cook. Cook for a couple minutes. This is the Matty Lane speed round on the undrafted free agents because we do have to get out of here pretty quick. So you go you. I'll just sit here and kill it at some point.
Elijah Badger, wide receiver out of Florida. He's one of my favorite wide receivers to look for on day 3 at this point in time. 6'1", 200 pounds. So not the biggest guy, but he played entirely wide receiver at Florida. That offense wasn't exactly great, but when you watch him, he just kind of has the look that says like, oh, that guy can play at the next level. He's loose. He's a very fluid route runner that moves very well. You get the ball in his hands and he makes guys miss. Everybody loves Ricky Pearsall last year. I'm not saying Badger's a better player, but guess what? Elijah Badger was a better producer at Arizona State, and then he was a better producer at Florida than Ricky Pearsall was, and everybody loved Ricky Pearsall. Not saying he's going to be a better player, but there's something there to him. So he needs a little bit of time. He's got to refine his routes. He's very loose. He's very ad-lib to some of his routes, but I think there's a chance there. Maybe it's helmet scouting a little bit, but he reminds me of Demarcus Robinson. Demarcus Robinson wasn't the most technical route runner at any point in time for the Chiefs, right? But he was a good vertical player, and when you got the ball in his hands and he ran the right direction, it was good. So I think I could see a little bit of that for Badger for the Chiefs, and he could be a sneaky wide receiver guy for them later in the season. Who else? Essa Pohl, offensive tackle out of Washington State. Again, another guy that was like a borderline late ad for a my guy in the KCSN draft guide. Former basketball player, so he's still getting used to playing offensive tackle a little bit, and you can see that his footwork isn't always clean, but he's so nimble, he's so light on his feet, and that basketball athleticism, the lateral agility, and the flexibility is there. So he's a guy that needs some time. He needs a runway, but I said it leading up to the draft, I would have rather taken him on day 3 than just about any day 2 offensive tackle, because I believe his upside is as high as any of them, and I've seen enough from his handwork and his footwork to say that he'll be able to figure it out. So I'm excited to see what he looks like, especially with the Chiefs, because he has that natural athleticism. He's going to get stronger, but I can see it. I can see the vision for how he goes into the next level. And then Jake Brenningstool, tight end out of Clemson. This is my last guy here. Maybe not as much of a my guy, but you can go back and watch Clemson over the last few years. You're not going to find any more tight ends with one-handed catches than Brenningstool over the past 3 seasons. Mm-hmm. That's all he does is catch one-handed passes that maybe weren't the most accurate. And so he wasn't as athletic as I thought he'd be, but 6'6", 240 pounds, good seam runner, good red zone weapon, reliable hands. I think he checks a lot of the boxes of things that we look for. And really, you compare him to Jared Wiley. Jared Wiley's a better mover, like he's more athletic, but just in terms of being able to run routes, get open, and securely catch the football, they kind of approach that part the same. The way they get in and out of breaks and then how they approach the football is very similar. So it's another style of prospect that I think the Chiefs would be very interested in. It makes sense that they went for him. Were there any UDFAs that you liked?
No, those are the ones I was most excited about too. So I think you nailed it.
Perfect.
I just, we're short on time here. I thank you all so much
Thank you guys.
for hanging out with us, and we really appreciate this support of KC Sports Network. It's been a lot of fun recapping this draft with all of you. It's been a lot of fun being here for every single pick of the 2025 NFL draft, and we can't wait to be here for every single pick of the 2026 NFL
This is
draft.
our best draft coverage ever. I'm going to say it. I'll say it.
It was the best. I think this was the best.
Shout out
year
Josh
we've ever
Briscoe.
done.
He brought the right energy. We missed Craig. We did. I wish Craig was here too, but Josh Briscoe being added to the mix was the best addition that we could have made. That energy is exactly what we needed.
And maybe we'll get Craig next year. Who knows? We'll find out.
4-man show.
That is going to do it for this edition and this season of the KCSN Draft Show. Thank you all so much for listening, watching, supporting. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.
Lado.
If you are still hanging out with us and you are wanting to find out the Raffle awards, Raffle winners, we are going to be going through that right now.
Yep.
So,
Do I need to grab this bag, Tuck?
Yeah,
You
good
do
news, guys. I got the wheel to work. And you guys will, everyone watching right now will realize why that's a big accomplishment because this wheel is absolutely massive. Look at this wheel. Look at what you guys did with this wheel. Appreciate everyone, all the support. We reached a new goal in terms of donations. We got over $15,000 for the All Juice Draft Workshop.
Thank you all so much.
You know what? Let's give it a little bit of applause.
Yep.
Give it a soundboard.
Yep.
So we got some raffle prizes to give away here. I'm going to be running this as well. Let me throw up the graphic. And look, hey, this is a part of it too. Like all year, 24/7, 365. If you go to givebutter.com/KCSN, you can always donate to benefit the All Juice Draft Workshop. Anytime you go to givebutter.com/KCSN draft. I don't want you to think just because we're not doing this, like you won't be entered in to win a raffle, right? But you can still donate to benefit this draft workshop that we are doing in memory of our friend Therese Paler. So I'm going to start it off. We do have one amendment to this graphic here. The Nick Bolton signed poster never showed up. So what we're going to do is we're going to swap it. We got a little Yankee swap. It's going to be a Chris Jones signed jersey. So there's two Chris Jones signed jerseys. Yeah, give it an applause. Two Chris Jones signed jerseys in here. One of them's white, one of them's red. I will I didn't bring my pen. Kent, do you have a can you keep track down names?
I would love to keep names.
Thank you. That'd be very.
I can do that for you on a
what
little
are we spinning for
spreadsheet.
first?
Maddie, I want you just to pull something out.
Oh,
Just
you want me to pull something?
Yeah,
Okay.
pull something
Blind
out
pull
random.
here. I think this looks like a McDuffie. We got Big
Ooh,
McDuffie.
That's a good one to start
signed
with.
jersey right off the top.
Big McDuff. All right, here we go. The Trent McDuffie sign. Let me give a couple shuffles to the names. Couple shuffles. Give it a couple shuffles, All right, there we go. Click to spin. I think
Here we go.
You guys might be able to hear this, I think. I don't know. Again, we try our hardest to break the Wheel of Names website. If you guys tune into us at all when we do any of these giveaways, they are loaded. Michael Steinhauer, you are the winner of the Trent McDuffie signed jersey.
That's a
big
sick
one.
jersey. That is a
Congratulations,
big
Michael.
one.
Thank you for your support of KC Sports Network and the All Juice Draft Workshop. That means a lot. We really do appreciate you.
If you do win, I do remove you. That is how it works. So you cannot win multiple times. That's just the way it is.
We should
What do we got?
probably say that at the top next year.
We got the red Chris Jones signed jersey.
Red Chris Jones.
Home jersey.
Red Chris Jones home jersey. Great signature, I think, on that one, too. Great inscription.
Unfortunately, it's folded up. But it's there.
It is there.
And if it's not, Tucker will do it for you.
I'll sign Chris Jones' name on it if you
Bradley Petsnick.
Congrats, Brad.
Sorry, Tucker. I'm just like reacting, reading them. I'll
Kent
shut up.
doesn't just
No,
want to
that's
type.
fine.
He wants to
No.
be involved.
It's just like instinct. I'm not even thinking about it.
No,
But
you can't.
You can go ahead
You
and do
can
it.
absolutely read it because that is
Ooh.
okay.
We got the helmet next.
I think that is Creed.
Yes.
That is a
We got-
Creed Humphrey signed
We got
mini
the
helmet.
Creed Humphrey mini speed helmet. Oh, there we go. I don't know if you can. You don't need to zoom in right now, but we can see this signature.
The Revo speeds now, you can't wear them
You
anymore.
can't. Oh, that's right. This
You
is.
can't wear them anymore.
This is vintage.
Yeah, you can't do this anymore. It's no longer accurate.
For the Creed jersey. I assume we'll just do the white Chris Jones jersey last, since you don't have it in the bag. I think
Yeah,
that's
that would make
probably
sense.
fair. That's probably fair. Michael Stevens, thank you, Michael, for so much for your support.
If your name is Michael S., you are on fire right now with this raffle.
That is actually wild.
You are killing it.
It is not. I swear the dice aren't loaded. Oh, is that Will Shields?
This is the Will Shields signed jersey.
That's a big one.
That's a big one.
That is a big one.
That's a big one, folks. Will Shields signed jersey. Here we go.
Michael S.
Look, you guys watched me shuffle these names. I got all kinds of names in here.
Shuffling.
Kevin Hansen.
Kevin!
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Kevin.
Congratulations. We appreciate your support.
Ooh, here we go. Chamari Connor.
Big Chim Dog. Big Chamari Connor.
Chimichurri, according to some KCSN
Some
podcasts.
case Chimmy
Chim.
The signed Chamari Connor jersey goes to
Michael.
Tara
Tara!
Wells.
Yes.
Thank you for your support, Tara. You,
Thank you, Tara.
yes.
All right, we got two more.
Shout out, Tara.
Well, one more in the bag. Two more total.
Right.
We have this to be the Brian Cook.
Ooh, big Brian Cook jersey.
Oh, I like the location of that signature too,
Good
right across
signature.
the six.
Good signature. I honestly, here, a hot take from me. I think I like the white jerseys. The white jerseys are very clean.
I mean, white on white is clearly the best
I agree.
uniform combo.
I
So.
agree. Kent doesn't agree with us, but it's okay.
No, Kent agrees.
I don't agree.
Kent definitely agrees.
Do not.
Brent Shepard.
Brent
Thank you.
Shepard!
Yeah, Brent.
Congratulations.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Brent. Really appreciate you, man.
And now,
Last
last
one.
one is the Chris. It is this Chris Jones signed jersey, but in white.
But in white. We do have it.
What?
I promise we have it. BJ
But
brought
in
it to the
white.
office. I've seen it. It's in our possession. We will send it to you. The winner of this final prize in the Therese Paler benefit, all Juice Draft Workshop benefit raffle
is. Your wheel's like not even spinning. It's
I know,
just
dude.
Like, it just says, "Yeah, we're gonna give you a name."
We try so hard to break this website. Wesley Peel.
Wesley Peel.
Congratulations, the clean white Chris Jones jersey.
Thank you.
Thank you guys all so much for all the support.
Yeah, we really, really do appreciate everyone that's helping us honor someone that meant so much to us at KCSN, but I think meant something to you too. And your donations, your generous donations, and your generous support, I think show that. So really, really means a lot that you stepped up and helped us do this. It's just a small thing that we try to organize essentially, and you guys do just such a great job of stepping up to the plate. So that's going to close it for draft season for all of us. And Maddie Lane is starting 2026 tomorrow. But this has been a lot of fun. It's been a great year. I know we obviously would have liked to see a Super Bowl out of the deal, but that's okay. Shout out to Holladay Distillery for hosting us this entire weekend. They did an incredible job, and we are always appreciative of them and their hospitality. Shout out Tucker D. Franklin. You have no idea how hard this guy works and how much he means to everything that we're doing here. So
There's a reason he was Employee of the Year.
that's the reason he won that trophy on Thursday night.
It's great. And before the year's over, too.
Yeah,
I won it-
4
won it in
months
April.
into the
Won it
year.
in April.
Is what he
Give me a
won.
high bar to set.
This could be like
I've set a high bar.
This is a Falcons Patriots situation right now. Maybe I'm gonna lock in.
Oh no! Oh no!
But we're gonna go. We're gonna go hang out. We're gonna have our little post draft party here and celebrate a little bit and celebrate another season at KC Sports Network. We are just a week away from celebrating 4 years of KC Sports Network.
That's as old as me.
It's almost as old as Maddie Lane. He's been 29 since this thing started. But that's going to do it for us. Thank you all so much for listening, watching, supporting again. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.
Whew.